Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my blog, where it's both my mission and my pleasure to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you, giving you specific takeaways, and all the rest, right? Everything in between. Before I get into it, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, if you're watching the video version of this, you'll notice that perhaps I have my Emerson soccer jersey. And the reason for this is because I literally just got off a Zoom call for an alumni event. You know, it was a virtual event. But it was great to catch up with teammates of mine, as well as see various generations of players that have participated in the program. And the lesson or the takeaway that in thinking about it that I'm reminded of is this idea of a just cause. So a just cause is something that's worth pursuing that is greater than yourself. And you can look at Emerson soccer as just, D3 sports and whatever else, but, each person that spoke really talked about the effort and care that they put into making Emerson soccer a legitimate program, advancing it, trying to have the best team possible, from just everything, right? The facilities to how, we conducted the practices and so forth. And over the years, the program has really grown tremendously. But that is only possible because of the effort of everyone involved that came before it and so forth, right? And it's almost a just cause. It's beyond yourself, right? Each person, once they graduate, they essentially are handing off a baton to somebody else. And, I think it's worth looking at life in that way, and art as well, of, what is the just cause? What is your why for creating the stuff that you want to create? Because ultimately, when you do it from an unselfish perspective, whether it is something as seemingly frivolous as entertaining people, you advance the cause of that. And eventually, afterwards, you get to hand the baton. And so that's why, like, even in the space of, let's say, movies, who you can look at, let's say, a J.J. Abrams, who was very directly influenced by Steven Spielberg, who was influenced by all the filmmakers that came before him, right? And so in our own way, or at least these directors, filmmakers, every one of them propelled movies forward and added something to the collective that is the medium of cinema, right? And yes, it's kind of grandiose and a little bit esoteric to really consider what's the meaning of life, what's the meaning of art type of thing. But I think ultimately, when you can capture that feeling within yourself and express it in terms of what you create, and really see that life and the things that you do can serve a purpose beyond yourself, I think that's important. Another way that this is kind of considered and can be expressed is the idea of resume skills versus eulogy values. I think when you're in the everyday trenches, a lot of us tend to get caught up of what I have to do and how do I accomplish this and this and that, when in reality, all that stuff, how many years you worked for X company or what you did, like, none of that's going to really matter upon your death. When someone delivers your eulogy, it's like, what are they going to talk about? They're going to talk about the meaningful moments, the funny moments, how much you contributed to, humanity, let's say, for lack of a better term. And so, this Zoom meeting was a nice reminder of that each of us, in that moment, we don't know the part that we're particularly playing. It is, I think in that sense, it's okay to be selfish about it, right? Like when I went, we wanted to be a winning team. We wanted to have good seasons. We wanted to just be as good as we could be. And so that was selfish, right? But there are instances in life where being selfish isn't a wrong thing. And so by being selfish as much as we were, we did what we could, and we weren't aware of it, but we propelled the program forward. And that, looking at what the kids have today and so forth, they're light years advanced in terms of all the things that we had and we were able to do. But that's great. I don't begrudge them of that. You start to see, your little puzzle, your little piece of the puzzle in this, grand universe of this thing, right? So it's really cool to kind of think back on. Anyway, so I just kind of wanted to open up with that because I think it was something special to think about, and I think every now and then we need moments of reflection like that. Beyond that, in terms of the actual specifics, last week, a lot of the stuff that I spent doing was, not necessarily my own. Work kind of has ramped up. There was a lot of things work-related that I had to do, plus I had some side projects, mainly for like Alzheimer's LA. I'm working on some cool stuff with them. So that ate up a lot of my time, and then and I'll get into a couple of these things, but and then an unexpected kind of thing came my way that I had to really sort of tackle that was time sensitive. So a lot of that kind of stuff. But I also did do a table read, my second table read of In Search of Sunrise, which is a script I wrote. So I'll talk about that. And I also went to therapy last week. A lot of good stuff there. I'll talk about that. And then overall, in the moments that I could, I did complete an outline for another film project that I'm aiming for. So, let me kind of start to break this down, right? So, the table read itself was great. It was a different group than last time overall. Some crossover, but overall, I would say mainly new people. Definitely some old people, but the majority was new people. So they came into it fresh. They didn't know what to expect. I didn't give them a lot of information, and it was cool, right? Because the script itself is, I would say, I think it's, without doing the full on calculation, I think it's like 50-50 in terms of males versus females. But for the table read, it was, everyone that participated was a woman. And that was cool, it's like a reverse Shakespeare. And it was really cool, like, to see, just kind of my natural instincts, I picked kind of people who I felt were right for roles. And it wasn't, they weren't doing it for performance, because again, I didn't even give them character bios. But nonetheless, I kind of tried to match the people accordingly. Ended up being really, really fun in that way. Chloe West, who stars in my first feature film, I gave her the role of the father, and she did a fantastic job. Amy Cassandra Martinez, who also is in my first movie, I gave her this like fun role. And she nailed it. Sarah Stratton, who's also in my first feature, I gave her, kind of a role of like a best friend, and she did a fantastic job. Candace Cruz, who, I've always kind of written towards as being the protagonist of Aya, that's her name. She played Aya, and, as always, she really did a fantastic job with that. And then everyone else, I'm thinking of like even my friend Elena Jordan. She played this male character, and she did a wonderful job with it. Like, just overall really good job. Lucia, who plays the mother in the Proof of Concept, she played the mother in this, and she did a fantastic job. And overall, it's, I know I'm kind of, throwing out the bouquets, and rightfully so, but, onto kind of the lesson part of it and what I took away from it. It was good to hear it out loud. A lot of things were working for me. And then, I was taking my notes as things were happening, of like, ooh, let's change this up, let's change that. But then afterwards, we had a good, decent feedback session. And it was funny because, people were kind of asking me questions. I was like, I'm not going to answer that until the very end, because I didn't want to taint anyone's perspective of, I wanted to see, was it working, was it not? If they couldn't answer the question, I wanted to hear what their perspective on the stuff was versus me feeding them the answers of how it should have been or what it meant. And it was good. And the nice part is, the more this process continues, the story is solid. Now it's about adding some more emotional stuff, right? The gravitas, the ideas that we're trying to convey are being conveyed. Now we can kind of take some of that back and add in some more emotional beats. And so John Comerford and I, after the session with everybody, once everyone signed off, we really talked, and there's opportunities for that, right? So it's not like, the good news is all the notes or questions or issues that people brought up, they're figure-outable, as Marie Forleo would say, and that's fantastic. And they're not difficult either, right? They're not like, we're not banging our head against the wall being like, what the hell, how do we solve this? It's like, no, they're right. B, it's like, oh, here's an opportunity to do that. Here's an opportunity to do that. And here's how we do this. And here's how we do that. And, everyone collectively brought in a lot of good stuff. And, overall the sentiment was, there's a lot there. It's definitely worthwhile pursuing. They enjoyed it overall. But, in order to fully get it to the point, and again, you're not going to satisfy everyone ultimately, but you want to make best effort and so forth. And so, for me, it's always, there's certain notes that I'm never going to go chasing. And there were a couple here and there, but overall, the majority, I'm like, you know what? Cool. I agree with that. That's worth pursuing. That's worth putting in the time. And that makes sense to me. That's not just, as they say, chasing a note. That's legitimate, and it's worthwhile, and it'll enhance the vision that I've always wanted to tell, right? It's not like, ooh, now I'm changing up because I'm trying to appease somebody. No, this addresses still at the core of what I was always trying to tell and build and so forth. So that's really cool. So that was a cool aspect of it, right? Beyond that, I went to therapy, and so for those who haven't followed my blogs and so forth and don't know about it, the therapy I do is kinesiology. So it's based on movement, it's based on body feedback, which is nice for me because I can't really lie. And it's a very rapid form of therapy. And, I've done so much of it over the years that now I do, kind of like a check-in. I try to go once every 3 months, right? So 4 times a year. And so I went, just as like a maintenance thing, But it's interesting, I was there for almost 3.5 hours, and you can, it's a workout for your brain. And the interesting part is when you do something like this, for the longevity that I've been doing it, definitely a lot of major things are cleared up in terms of my psyche and so forth. And so when you get to the things that, you still have issues with, they're deep, dark, kind of fucked up things, if you will. And so, my therapist, he has protocols, and so he was like, hey, like if you have the time, like I really want to work with you through this protocol. So I was like, yeah, let's go through it. But yeah, I had some stuff planned for the rest of the day that I was going to get to, and man, like in the best of ways, like my brain was just fried. Like it was definitely a worthwhile session. Really happy about it, but it's like, it'd be the equivalent of like if you worked out for 8 hours, physically. Like this was, this is the type of therapy that your mind really is working to a level that, even like I work my mind creatively in the things that I do, but these types of sessions, nothing compares to it. Like your brain hasn't ever worked that hard, at least, not that I can compare it to. And so I was just fried. I was exhausted. So I just kind of took it easy for the rest of the day. But definitely worthwhile, and it opened up my mind for the creative stuff that I'm doing. The main thing that I'm trying to work on, In Search of Sunrise is a movie that I want to make, but I'm going to need funding for it. And so as I, go out and try to get that funding, I would still like to do a movie, this year. And so I've been considering kind of like a project that I know I can shoot on a micro budget myself that, still has value and so forth. And so I've been kind of working on that script, and post-therapy, things kind of started hitting. And so I completed a draft. When I say draft, I mean an outline draft. And yeah, kind of, so I think it's good. And, now as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about, okay, now that I have that, how do I infuse, juxtapose it with kind of what's happening in our world, not necessarily like in terms of COVID and making it like very case specific and very time stamped, but nonetheless, just this grander idea of, like kind of going specific with it, and so forth. It's tough to kind of explain right now because I haven't fully formulated it in my mind, but, certainly therapy made me more opened up to, okay, how do I approach this, right? So that was really cool. And so far, just based on the feedback of people that I did send the outline to, they agree, there's something there. And I wrote it very shorthand in terms of an outline. First off, it isn't only an outline. Second off, I wrote very shorthand, and so they're like, the questions that arose was because of the shorthand. They're like, okay, what does this mean? Sometimes like, I can write like they have a meaningful talk, right? And I know what the meaningful talk is. For them, it's like, okay, what does that mean? And so when I explain it to them, which is good for me, right? I like when they do ask me questions because it forces me to actually answer that. So that's also been beneficial to get that feedback about the outline, because that further forces me to think about the story and, answer things and so forth. And I really love that part of the process when people do ask me, because if there's a back and forth dialogue, we can come to something. So that's kind of one of the main things that I've been working on, and or at least on the side, even though I didn't get to do as much as I wanted to last week. And then been working on a couple of videos for Alzheimer's LA. So had to crank out a draft of a couple of those videos, which was heavy lifting. Now that I've got the drafts done, I think any notes and so forth will be a lot easier to tackle. It's always the rough cut. That's you're creating something from scratch. Once you start to get to the revision process, then obviously generally it becomes easier. So that, and for as much as something like came up that was unexpected, and it was not a good expected, sometimes you get unexpected things and they're good. Sometimes you get unexpected things and they're bad. This was more on the bad side of things, so I had to kind of deal with certain stuff. But when that happens, it's like you can't, why be upset about it? Just kind of tackle it, deal with it, and B, if it takes away some of the time that I wanted to for some of my own creative stuff, it's like, well, that's just reality, and so it doesn't behoove me to bitch and complain about it. It's like, just handle what you need to, and then get back to the stuff that matters. And yeah, so all in all, that is kind of an overview of my past week. As always, if you have any questions or thoughts of your own, please ask in the comment section or hit me up on social media at Svitek. It could be about this, it could be about anything else. Would love to converse with you. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. I appreciate you and hope to see you next time.